Okay, well, congratulations for your new album. First, the first question, of course, why did you decide to do like a Dio album?
I love Ronnie James Dio, and also it's been a, um, a journey of mine to try to play more like a singer on my guitar. And so I made a list of singers that I wanted to learn from and I wanted to copy. And the first one I wrote was Ronnie James Dio. And I'd already been using some of Ronnie's melodies as lessons at my school. One of the main ones was "Long Live Rock and Roll," which it's the beginning of the verse. It's simple enough where you can learn the notes very quickly, but to get the emotion and to get the feel and to get the slides and the dynamics and all those elements of expression, to get those right, it's really challenging for me. I have my students do it too. And I think once you start to get it and it starts to work, it opens up the door to being such a better guitar player. And so in a way, part of doing this record was I just wanted to have a good guitar lesson and have Ronnie James Dio be my teacher.
Yeah, that reminds me of one question I wanted to ask you. I remember, I think it was Bob Berg, a jazz saxophonist. I think it was him that in one interview, he said that sometimes we are, as an instrumentalist, too obsessed with soloing and stuff, especially in jazz. But he said that the most important in a song is always the melody. And when you have to perform a melody that's originally written for a singer, that it's very important that you know the lyrics, you understand the feeling of the whole song, what it's supposed to be, to get in the mood to. So I would like to know how do you approach to performing like a vocal melody on guitar, because it's so different.
Well, I think the brain, it's easy to think of just the notes. You go like, okay, well, here's the 5 notes, and just play them. And it's somehow it's harder for us to think about all the things that are in between. And like, how do you, when you go from one note to the next, how do you get there? Is it just stop and there's a space, or does it slide, or does it hammer on, or does it come from above? Like there's so many different. And when it attacks, does it attack soft or hard, or with a pinch to give it a little E sound? There's so many little details like that. And at first it can seem like too much, like, oh, it's too many details, I can't handle it. But as you do it, it becomes an instinct, and you start to realize that singers have, just like a guitar player has their licks, singers have licks too. And if you start to learn that language, it starts to go smoother. And so that's why it's just a matter of spending time with it. It was funny. I did a guitar clinic recently, and I had a lot of students, and I said, the next time that you want to buy a pedal, like an effect pedal, I said, don't buy the pedal, learn a melody. Because I said that will change the way you sound more than pressing on a pedal. Basically, like a pedal, you sort of hope, like, well, I'll play the same way I always play, and somehow the pedal will make it something else. But if you really want to expand how you sound as a musician, learn a melody and learn another one and learn another one. And after you learn 300 melodies, it's going to change you. You're going to play the guitar in a very different way than you did at the beginning.
Yeah, and how you deal, because I was thinking that sometimes, like when you hear like Ronnie singing like Holy Diver, just the Holy Diver, just that note, it's, I mean, we as a guitarist, we cannot increase the volume like as a voice. And how do you approach those kind of situations?
Well, one of the main things technically was pinch harmonics, because I'm trying to imitate the vowel sounds, and the singer has E, U, A, O. And so with the pick harmonic, E, U, E, U, you can kind of get it. It might not be quite quite as full range, but you can definitely you can get much closer. And so I started to play guitars that had shorter necks, or less, I should say, less frets. Like I used an Ibanez Ibanez Roadstar, like it had 21 frets, like a Strat. And since it had less frets, I had more room to do the pick harmonics. So that, and also just playing horizontally. I found if I some of the songs I'd do the whole melody on just one string, because that makes it easier to slide. And you don't have to use the slide on your finger. You can just use your finger as a slide. And it was funny because like when I first started playing guitar when I was 9, I only used my second finger. A lot of this stuff I'm just using the second. I mean, I'll have the first finger that is supported, but I'm just playing up and down like this, because then it's so easy. If you want to slide, it's right there. But mentally, it's challenging because as guitar players, we're usually trained to play across the strings. We've practiced our scales, and if we want to, play the 5 notes of the pentatonic scale, we'll keep our hand in one spot and play across the strings, where you don't get slides that way. But if you learn the scale, horizontally, it works so much better. It's so much easier to be expressive, but you have to know where to put your finger, and it's not the same. It's instead of going this way, you're going this way, and everything's different. So that's the mental challenge.
Wow, and how was learning, or probably most of them you would know, but all the riffs and parts of the such guitarists, as Blackmore, Vivian Campbell and Yomi.
It was so much fun. These days I don't play that much heavy metal guitar, heavy metal rhythm guitar. I tend to play more blues or pop or whatever. But that's what I grew up with, and so it made me feel like a teenager, just playing those riffs. And the hair would stand up on my arms. And it really surprised me. I've never had that happen so much, except on this record. Just every song, the hair stand up. And I started to wonder, like, what's going on? Why is that? Why does hair stand up? And I don't know if I really have the answer, but the idea that I've come up with is that it's actually the feeling of being in a life or death situation. Like you're either going to survive or you're going to be killed, which is a pretty intense feeling. And that, because that's the feeling like if you have a cat and a cat is like threatened by something, like another cat or a dog, its hair stands up on its back, and to that animal, it really feels like this is life or death. And so I think somehow Dio's music connects to that emotion of like, I've got to bring all my strength and all my power to survive this battle. Like it's kind of like, the feeling of life and death and surviving. So that's my theory. I'm willing to hear other theories, though.
It's very funny because 2 weeks ago I got to interview Vivian Campbell. So I was very surprised when I got the call to prepare this interview, and I saw you recorded the Dio album. It's like, wow, that's such a coincidence. and Vivian was telling me that when he first started auditioning for the Dio band, and at the very beginnings, that they felt like such a incredible chemistry playing, and that there was like magic in the air. And I wanted to ask you, how difficult is to make versions of those albums that were made in an era where everything was played live, and the biggest part of the music was the magic of being of playing at the same time together. How do you manage it now?
Well, of course, that's wonderful when you can have that situation. With this one, I did it much more, overdubbing the parts separately. But fortunately, I had a good map to follow. because I'm not creating new music. I'm recreating it with my own kind of style and performance fingerprint on it. So it maybe if it's new music, sometimes it's nice to do it that way, because you'll discover things from the performance that are almost like accidents, but they're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, I didn't really want accidents. I wanted it to be very strictly to follow that original structure, and so I think for this, I could do it that way, and it would still work.
And do you know them personally? Have you met them?
Have I met who?
Like Vivian Campbell, Richie Blackmore.
Oh yeah, I used to see him at the grocery store. I think we lived close to each other when I lived in Hollywood, so I would always see him at the grocery store. And let's see, I don't think I've ever met Tony Iommi, and yet I've never met Blackmore either. So Vivian's the only one I met. I just see him, and we're both buying apples.
Okay, that was just curious. I was thinking, if in the future you decided do something like the Dio album, but with songs from another guitarist, which guitarist would be?
Well, again, I would probably do a vocalist before I do a guitarist. So, some of my other favorite singers, I would love to do Boston with Brad Delp.
Wow.
Because his singing is so amazing. I mean, anybody who sings like so high that I could never hit it with my own voice, but the guitar would open up the ability to play it. So when I think of like the really high singers, Ann Wilson from Heart, it'd be amazing to play her stuff, or Jeff Tate from Queensryche, like that stuff. Some other like really high, and not necessarily. I mean. Or Rod Stewart. I mean, I've copied so many singers already. Just when I do my guitar lessons, I use singers a lot as lessons. Steve Perry from Journey. Man, if you play like the vocal melody of Lights, beautiful melodies that work really well on guitar. And the hardest one would be like singers that don't move much. Like it would be really hard to do Bob Dylan.
Yeah, because they repeat a lot of times the same notes. So
yeah, that's really hard to reproduce and to be able to get something that's gonna that's really going to work. But that's the thing about Dio, is like the melodies are dramatic.
Yeah.
They're high, they're low, they move a lot, and so it works nice for guitar to do that kind of thing.
That's great. And I want to know, are you planning on putting up some shows presenting this album?
I don't know if I'll have time. Plus, I would have to find a heavy metal rhythm guitar player, because I think you really need both those. Sometimes I'll come up with an arrangement where I can kind of go back and forth. I'll play the melody and then quickly play the rhythm and go. Keep going. With the Dio stuff, I think you really need to have the rhythm guitar playing all the time. And I would be jealous because I would want to do it. If I was playing the rhythm, I'd be like, I want to play the vocal. If I was playing the vocal, I want to play the rhythm. So
you can ask him. You can ask Vivian in the grocery. No one's gonna play that better.
But it would be cool.
It would be great. Okay, I was thinking that in classical music, all the orchestras and all the musicians they've been playing forever, like Beethoven, Bach, all the classics. But it's not so common in the modern, let's say modern music, like rock, pop, to make a cover like albums like this, playing other music. You think that's a problem we have, that it should be like more natural, to just play music from others, like you can do like a whole album from Beethoven, like doing a whole album from Jimmy Page or.
So I'm not quite sure.
Like if this should be more normal between like rock musicians doing albums, like making covers from some one artist.
Oh, I'm trying to think. Can you think of any? Like, has anybody done that where they've done all one artist?
I don't know. Yeah, I remember there was like this singer called Kevin Leto that she had like a whole album of Police and was arranged by Russell Ferrante from the Yellow Jackets, and it's a
Okay.
beautiful album. And all the
Yeah.
covers are different. I can think of this right now. I'm not sure.
I think there might have been like one where I think it was like a jazz guitar player named Bill Frisell, and he might have done the Painted from Memory record by Elvis Costello and Burt Bacharach.
Okay. Yeah, and Jennifer Warnes, you know Jennifer Warnes, the one that sang on Dirty Dancing, and she had a full album of Leonard Cohen songs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, to me, it certainly makes for a nice theme.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to me, like Dio was kind of the perfect thing because I could choose one artist, but at the same time, you know, since Dio was solo and Black Sabbath and Rainbow, that gave it a little variety too. Because you know, I've got 3 different bands to work with.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask you. I think you're going on tour in Japan with Mr. Big, right? In summer. And are you planning also in any new recording?
I think we might do some new recording. I hope so. I started to write some stuff and send it up to Eric, and we'll see if he can do something with it.
Oh, that would be great. And I was thinking also, like, today there's a lot of bands that do like celebrate anniversaries, and they do like reunion tours or releasing. And I think in 2 years' time, it's going to be like 40 years since you formed Racer X. Is there any chance that you would be doing some anniversary, like a tour or a recording? Or
well, actually, I just did a bunch of solos for Jeff Martin's new record. Excuse me, and I don't know. I don't know if it's his record or if he's got a band. I didn't even ask. He just sent me some music and he said, "Oh, I'd love if you could play guitar on this." I was like, "Oh, it sounds good. I will." So I didn't. It was very very casual, but I worked really hard to play the best solos I could, and I think Harry Chaucer, who's the original Racer X drummer, is playing on it too, and so I'm proud of what I played. I think it should be coming out this year, so that could be cool too. Again, I don't know. I actually don't know what it's called, but it's Jeff Martin on vocals, Harry Chaucer on guitar. The other guitar players put it together is I forget Milan Polak, I think is his name.
No.
Yeah, but he sounds good.
Oh, nice, good news for your fans. Before we were talking about how cool is, how much fun did you have playing all those Campbell and Yomis and Blackmore's riffs and stuff. I wanted to ask you the opposite question. I mean, it's obvious that we always learn from playing parts from other guitarists, but I was thinking when Richie Kotzen, who's a huge guitarist, played all your parts in Mr. Big, the time that was, did you learn anything from watching him play your parts in another way?
Oh, you know what? I learned a lot from learning the bass parts, because I had to learn, the Jimmy Bain parts, Geezer Butler parts, and one of the best ones was on Man on the Silver Mountain. The bass player is Craig Gruber. I'd never even heard of, but it's almost like a disco bass line, like, and I never would have thought that was the bass part. But when I played it, I was like, "Oh, this sounds great!" And I'm such a better bass player now after learning all those parts. And the Geezer Butler parts in Black Sabbath, those are so interesting because he rarely hits the low note. Like in Heaven and Hell is a song in E, and so you think, okay, it's E, I'm gonna hit my low E string a lot. He never hits it. He always hits the high, like the middle E. And I kept waiting, like, okay, at some point it's gonna go down, hit that low one. he hardly ever hits the low E, and on all the Sabbath stuff, he's like that. He really stays on the higher register. I don't know why, but it's a big part of his style. It really sounds cool. And the Jimmy Bain stuff, that was just like physically really demanding. You know, song like Stand Up and Shout, because it's fast and it just never stops. And I was like, my arm hurt after playing that one.
Well, there's some things that until you don't start learning it, you don't realize those things.
Yeah, and the bass parts also compositionally are, to me, they're smart. Like it's almost like they're like a classical composer, because it's as a guitar player, I always think like, oh well, the bass player will just play what I play but an octave lower, but they don't. They come with a whole different melody that's going on, and it's so cool. It's usually more intelligent than what the guitar is doing.
Well, because it's their role, they know what they have to do. So, and I was thinking, relating to all this, nowadays, you still practice a lot, and in case you do, what's your kind of routine practice? What do you do?
I think I mean most of what I play is when I'm teaching my students. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about that is I always teach them by coming up with a short musical phrase, and I really want to give them something that they can really play. I don't want to give them something that's impossible. It's going to take 2 years to learn. I want something that if they work on it, they can get it by the end of the day. But that the process of learning it will show them something new or challenge them in some way. So it's like it's within reach, but it's still a challenge. And so I'm always thinking of them, like how can I connect what they have and just take it a little further. And then I build a phrase around that, and it's always rhythmic. I mean, it might be a solo, it might be a guitar solo, but there's still a rhythmic structure to it. And so almost everything I play has got a rhythm, and I'm stomping my foot, and I'm being very intentional about the rhythm. And so, because I've done about 13,000 of those lessons, it's really improved my own sense of time and ability to feel the time and play around it. Because a lot of times when you're playing with a rhythm, you don't necessarily want to play right on it. You kind of play in between and around it. You do syncopations, and so it's something that you almost hear more like in disco or funk. If you hear a song like "Fire" by the Ohio Players. I don't know, Jungle Boogie. Jungle Boogie by whoever did Jungle Boogie, Kool and the Gang. Like as a kid, I would have thought like, oh, that's not cool. I want to do burning solos, but that stuff is so important for developing your inner core of rhythm. And that's going to be valuable no matter what you're doing. So I think that's probably the main thing I practice is like things that have a rhythmic structure, and then everything else goes on top of that.
Mm-hmm. And I was thinking that this is my own curiosity, because when you released your first guitar video, I think you probably were like 18 or 19, and your technique was already insane, and most of guitarists ever will get there. I assume that one part is because of your talent and your easiness to do stuff, but I would like to know how in such short amount of years did you get to that level of technique? You were like, how many hours would you practice a day? You were very structured in practicing. How did you do that?
I mean, that time I was practicing a lot. And I never, it was funny, like the only time I ever counted how many hours was the first year that I played guitar. I was about 9 years old, and I had to use the clock because I didn't sound good. It wasn't. I would be playing and it's like, oh, this sounds terrible. I'm a beginner. I can't play the guitar yet. So I would kind of use the clock to force myself to play for 1 hour. But after I'd been playing a year or two, it started to sound better. I started to really enjoy it. I liked listening. So then I don't have to look at the clock anymore. I just play as much as I can. But so much of the practicing I did also was together with bands. So I was, as a teenager, I was always in a cover band, and we would rehearse a lot. And that way, when I'm playing with the drummer, and I've got to fit, I've got to back up the singer, and I've got to know the arrangement of the song. And so those elements, that's so often what's missing. The classic term is like the bedroom guitar player, who never learns to play with the band. And fortunately, although I would go home and play more in my bedroom, but I was a garage band player. I mean, I've played in basements and garages, and in people's dining rooms. We used to have a double bass drum kit set up in my dining room. Rehearsing at my house every day.
Well, that was more. I grew up the same, playing with us everywhere, in someone's house, in the garage, wherever. I think this was very magical. I think right now we're missing a little of that magic with all the social networks and the Instagram guitarists. I don't know, how do you feel right now? All these, the social media, the Instagram. Do you have any thoughts about that?
It's funny because I have fun with it. I mean, I have an Instagram thing, and I put videos in there. I have a fun time doing it. But obviously, it's like a very quick little dose of something exciting. It's like, how exciting can I be in 8 seconds? And so, it's. I hope that there's still room for longer pieces of music, and people are willing to sit down and listen to a whole song or a whole album, or a whole concert, and but it's I have fun doing it. I don't really pay much attention to anybody else doing it, so I'm not I'm not a great consumer of it, but I have fun putting the videos on there and seeing how people react.
Well, the good news is that there are a lot of bands that play like 70s rock right now that are hitting hard, so I think that's hope. We have some hope. I wanted to ask you, you have your Ibanez, own models, and you're famous for playing Ibanez. But I was thinking, have you ever thought of doing a completely different album of what you usually do? Like, get like some Strats, 335s, Les Pauls, and vintage gear, and do a blues album or something like completely different, just to do something strange.
Yeah. Well, one of the fun parts about being an Ibanez endorser is there's such a wide range of instruments. Like if I want to play something like a Strat, I'll just go back and get an Ibanez Blazer from 1981, and it's basically really cool, made in Japan Strat. If I want to play something that feels like a Les Paul, I'll get it like a mid 90s Ghost Rider, and it's the great Les Paul feel, way less expensive, and it's still my brand. But like over the years, of course, when I was a kid, a teenager, I played a Les Paul. That was my first electric guitar, and then I've also like anybody else, I've got guitar heroes. So, for example, like one of my biggest guitar heroes is Pat Travers. So, Pat Travers has an album cover where he's standing on the front and he's got a Gibson Melody Maker. And it's been modified, but it's a Gibson Melody Maker. So I decided I was curious. I wanted to buy one and see what it was like. So I bought it, and it's got the big thick neck, which I liked a lot. And I ended up, like, when I had asked Ibanez to make the Fireman guitar for me, they said, "Well, what kind of neck do you want?" And I said, "Well, how about like this Gibson Melody Maker?" And so they did. And so actually the neck on the fireman is very influenced by the Gibson melody makers. So in a way, the personality of those other instruments get into mine.
Wow. Before finishing the interview, I always had a curiosity that I want to ask you, and I couldn't the last interview. I saw those videos many years ago with you and Marty Freeman in this Japanese show that you were guitars, and I always held the curiosity. Was that only one show, or was that a regular show? How many times? I mean, can you explain me how was that story? That you guys would drink something,
Yeah, I think we might have done that twice. But I was living in Japan at the time, so I had opportunities to do stuff like that. But now, I moved out of Japan, so that was it.
But they would had like a guitar show in commercial TV. That was the show.
I don't know exactly. I mean, it was on TV, but I don't know which channel or.
Okay, yeah, I had curiosity about that. Okay, I would like to ask you: have you thought about your next project? How it's going to be, or is it too early for that?
Actually, well, before I hurt my hip, I was working on something, but I'm going to put that on hold for a while. I think with the Mr. Big tour coming this year, I'm going to focus on that. I'm always focusing on my online school because I have a lot of students there, and that I was getting a lot of inspiration from teaching there. And if I should probably practice these Dio songs a little bit, because I really did kind of put it together in the studio, and it'd be nice to know a couple of them where I can play it all the way through as a performance.
Do you guys are gonna come on tour in Europe? Do you know that with Mr. B?
Well, the first part of the tour is in Southeast Asia and Japan, but then after that, like in maybe the beginning of 2024, we're playing other places.
Okay, let's hope that you can come to Spain. That would be great. I would like to know how do you like when you go on tour? It's because it's hard to stay away at home and travel so much. You love it, or it's
Well, it's been a weird. It's been a weird time for everybody with the COVID and everything. So that kept me at home for a few years, and I kind of got used to it because I have a young son. My son's 8 years old, and so it's nice to be around for him. And yeah, so I think in general, I don't really want to come. I don't really want to go back on the road for like really long periods of time. I like coming back so I can be with my son. But I mean, I've been on tour since I was 22 years old, so it's I think for anybody will tell you the same thing. It's the shows are amazing, and the travel, that can wear on you after a while. But you figure out ways around it.
Okay, we are almost running out of time. I would do like a fill out questions. One question is that if there's any artist that you would love to do something with him, like or her, or like an album or whatever, and also are there any new artists that you are listening today that you say, oh, you have to listen to that guy?
Oh, let's see. That'd be cool to work with. I think like. I'm not coming up with a good answer for either one.
Don't worry.
I would say like often the guitar player that I think of for inspiration is Eric Johnson. I really love the way Eric Johnson plays, and I like him as a human being. So when sometimes if I think like even if I'm like writing an Instagram post, I think like, is that too weird? Would Eric Johnson write that?
Well, I think he does a lot of things for foundations and charity, right? Events, I think.
Well, I've seen, he's probably the player that I've seen live the most recently. If he comes and plays in Portland, I'll always go see him. Where I don't get out and see shows that much. My hearing's pretty bad, so it's hard for me to see like a loud concert. But I'll always like to go see Eric Johnson.
Cool. And any new artists?
With new artists,
young ones?
I don't really know. I mean, I would I should, because I mean, actually, my wife has been listening to Samara Joy, who's like a jazz singer.
Uh-huh.
She sounds great. I think she just won a Grammy. So that I sort of my wife's a big fan of her, and I listen and go like, I like it too. But I tend to go back in time, like as you can see, doing a Dio record,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll go back and listen to the jazz players from the '50s, or
Mm-hmm.
so I tend to be curious about the people who influenced my heroes.
Okay.
I know like Eddie Van Halen's dad was a jazz clarinet player, so that made me think like, well, I want to find out about jazz clarinet because that's what Eddie Van Halen was listening to at home, and maybe it would help me to understand more about what he did by understanding what he listened to. So I tend to go back in time more, and I hope there's some good people out there, and so somehow I'll find out about them.
Yeah, Vivian Campbell told me the same, that when he did his blues album, he got into Rory Gallagher, and then he started listening to Muddy Waters because it was the huge main influence from Rory.
Yeah.
So final, everything is connected. Well, Paul, thanks so much for the interview. It's been a great pleasure talking to you again. So,
thank you too.
And would love to see you play again here in Spain. So hopefully you guys can make it, and
all right, have a great one.
Wish your recovery the best.
Thank you. So far, so good.
Okay, take care. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye bye.